I think, if we
All
need to
right,
get going, we can.
let's go.
All right. Welcome, everyone. It is Tuesday, November 17th. This is the Board of County Commissioners policy sessions. We're starting with policy sessions first, and then we'll have issues at the end of the day today. The first policy session is Construction Career Pathways Project, or CUP2. We have Tracy Moreland from County Administration and other guests. Tracy, would you please introduce our guests and go ahead?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Gary. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tracy Moreland from County Administration. And I want to introduce Bridget Daisy, who you know, she's the Clackamas Workforce Partnership Director. And her project manager, Brian Fuentes, I think is also going to be joining us. And I also want to welcome there's several staff in the Zoom audience attendee list today, and also folks from Metro. So we're here today to talk about the Construction Career Pathways Project, C2P2. And as you know, you identified C2P2 as one of the projects that staff should try to complete before the end of the year. In 2020, we've had several policy sessions and presentations on this. Back in March, Metro gave a presentation in July, and then we had an update in October. So staff have been moving forward on this since you gave us that direction. And I'm going to do just a really quick recap for folks watching. And this will be brief because I want to make sure there's time for discussion and questions at the end. But the purpose of C2P2 is to address the lack of diversity in the construction trade in the workforce in the metro area. And it focuses on people of color and women, trying to recruit and retain these folks into the construction industry. In 2018, Metro and the City of Portland commissioned a market study, which showed, among other things, that in the next few years, there was going to be an increase in construction-related opportunities, job opportunities, and also people of color and women make up a very small percentage of workers in construction. And so I do have a quick PowerPoint in your packet, is all the details of the Clackamas County C2P2 plan that staff created. But I just wanted to run through just a quick PowerPoint that touches on some of those elements. Christina, if you have that ready. So Metro, after this market study, convened a work group of public agencies in the summer of 2018 to develop the regional C2P2 framework. And that consisted of 7 different essential points that public agencies should consider when planning their capital projects. Next slide, Christina. So here they are, and I'm not gonna go in great detail on all of them, but this is the 7 essential points. Set clear diversity goals, project thresholds, track and review progress, develop workforce agreements, implement anti-harassment and culture change strategies, collectively invest in workforce supply, and establish a regional collaborative. Next slide, please. So the first on the list is set clear diversity goals. And these are region-wide goals streamlined throughout the region. So in our Clackamas County plan, we've committed to supporting those goals. 20% of work hours in each apprentice trade shall be performed by state registered apprentices. 14% shall be performed by women, and 25% of the work hours shall be performed by persons of color. And like I say, all agencies that adopt C2P2 support these goals, and regardless of their population and demographics. So, and this is something that is ramped up over a period of several years. So not instantaneous, but the goal is to reach this goal after about 5 to 7 years, see where we are. The next slide, please. And so Clackamas County departments work together to try and adjust some of the other elements in the framework, and the thresholds and ways that Clackamas County could support that framework. And again, more detail is in your packet, but just really quickly, when it comes to county capital projects, require contractors to have written policies promoting positive and inclusive workplace culture, language establishing zero tolerance for job site bullying and harassment of women and minority workers. And for larger county projects with a value greater than 10 million, workforce agreements will be established that will include, when possible, contractor participation and job site-wide program promoting positive workplace culture, a minimum number of apprentice and journey level women and minority workers employed for a specific duration and employed at the end of the project. So that's addressing the monitoring and tracking of your progress toward your goals. And contractor participation with county staff in a mutually selected project presentation for the benefit of the technical training and school related to that project. So this part of the plan addresses several criteria in the framework, as I mentioned, tracking the progress, workforce agreements, anti-harassment training, and this can all happen as individual county projects arise, and we can work to address those individually. So that's kind of on the back end. And finally, one of the final elements of the C2P2 framework I wanted to mention that's in the plan is what's on the front end, and that's investing in workforce. So the next slide, please, Christina. So county staff proposes an initial funding allocation to Clackamas Workforce Partnership to manage and invest in workforce supply through one or more of the following options. And then the next slide, just list those. And again, these are written out in great detail in your packet. And these different projects are just examples created by Clackamas Workforce Project Partnership, Bridget and her staff, descriptions of what a funding allocation from you could be used for to invest in workforce, which is part of the C2P2 framework again. So I'm not gonna go through and read in detail, but I just want to touch on what each one of these is. The first one, the $50,000 allocation in Clackamas pre-apprenticeship program would provide pre-apprenticeship located in Clackamas County. And this one is contingent on funding from other committed sources for a total cost of $200,000. It would provide services and materials to a cohort of about 20 pre-apprenticeship participants within Clackamas County. So CWP staff is working to ascertain and what would be possible as far as collaborating with other partners like Clackamas Community College, grant opportunities to try and secure the funding to bring that training program here in the county. And learning about what might be possible there. Project 2 is a similar program, but that is Portland pre-apprenticeship program. So an allocation of $25,000 to $50,000 would provide support for a number of folks in Oregon Tradeswomen Inc., which is a pre-apprenticeship program, but their office is located in Portland. So the Clackamas County residents would travel outside the county to participate in this program and wouldn't be bringing the county program here. And that funding would be for 5 to 10 participants with Oregon Tradeswomen. And then the third project, promoting the trades, is simply working with schools and school district parents and partners to bring info to students and young people who are interested in the construction trade. It would help increase the construction industry knowledge of frontline staff through industry trainings and other pre-apprenticeship programs with students and contractors. And so in your packet, again, there's several possible scenarios that a funding allocation could support workforce investment with this allocation, $25,000 to $50,000. And then the last option is support for pre-apprenticeship costs and an allocation of $10,000. What we call in-kind support would include support for uniform, boots, tools, student transportation stipends, PPE, other miscellaneous expenses related to being an apprentice that can be kind of costly, and all managed by Clackamas Workforce Partnership. And the staff there, we worked together to create these options because we wanted you to have an idea of what your allocation would fund. We're not asking you to choose one of these, but just to allow for staff, for you to see what your allocation could possibly fund if the opportunity came up and you allocated any resources, then staff would pursue one or more of these options. Next slide. And finally, if the framework is adopted by you, the county will be asked to support efforts on a regional collaboration initiative. It's a implementation committee, and the county would receive 2 seats to participate in quarterly meetings with others around the region on best practices and successes. And staff will work with the county administrator and department directors to recommend who those individuals should be to serve on that committee. Next slide. The C2P2 program fits within the board's policy perspective of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and your commitment to use that lens when making your decisions on policy and operations and budget, and also supports the strategic goal to grow a vibrant economy. Construction jobs are family wage jobs, and it helps in growing our diverse workforce. So if adopted, county staff recommends twice yearly updates on C2P2 goals and progress to you. If you approve, there is an accompanying board resolution in your packet, and that would be formally read and voted on at your next business meeting, which I think is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And there's several options in your packet for you to consider. There's 4 different funding allocation options. I'm just gonna read the one that staff recommends, which is option 1. Adopt the C2P2 framework and board resolution. Allocate a beginning sum of $50,000 to Clackamas Workforce Partnership to invest in workforce supply in one of the options outlined in the proposed plan, in consultation with Clackamas County staff, and support recommendations regarding capital project thresholds and workforce agreements provided by departments, making financial feasibility assessments as they arise. And then the next slide. That's really our C2P2 proposed county plan in a nutshell, and an overview of C2P2 in general. And before we start with our question and discussion, I just really wanted to mention that over the last few months, there's been so many departments who participated in this, and it's been a huge collaboration effort. One of the largest collaborative efforts I've participated in at the county, with WES, DTD, BCS, Finance, County Council, our diversity team, and I want all of them to know, to have our thanks, and for spending time to do such an important project, and spending time to make this happen and present it to you today. Also, Metro staff and Clackamas Workforce Partnership have been invaluable partners and resources in this effort, so thanks to them as well. And I will end it here and turn it back over to our county administrator. Okay.
Gary?
Thank you, Tracy. So any questions from the commissioners? And there are 2 hands raised, Chair.
First, Tracy, great report. In the years I've been on this commission, that's the best report you've ever given. Excellent job. Very excited about the program, and can't wait to vote on it. You know, one thing that I was just texting Gary, our travel expenses have been 0 this year. There is money that has been budgeted, and there's also other monies that I think we should, you know, support this program. And next year, of course, you'll have to, well, I think if we budget, it's probably within this year's budget, but it's really great job. Thank you, Bridget, and folks who worked on this, work with Metro. Very excited. And next I have Paul, Sonia, Martha, and looks like everybody, Ken.
All right.
Yeah, well done, Tracy. Good to see you again. I think it sounds wonderful, and it's for a good cause, admirable effort, and definitely you know, recognizing the need for the workers and trying to get our minority populations and our more diverse workforce is always a good thing. I do have some questions though, and Is this, well, actually a few questions, let's just do them one at a time. Is this seed money or is this an ongoing program? I'm trying to understand, and Bridget, I know that, I think it was last week, maybe, I don't know what meeting it was or what topic it was, but we were talking about training versus preparation. My question is this more about preparation than training? And I do want to recognize when I say all of this that I have been so pleased and overwhelmed with the type of training and apprenticeship programs that the trades provide in every aspect. And also that they have a growing diverse workforce and welcome with open arms all people, men, women, people of color, whatnot. So that's really great. So I'm trying to understand how this program might mesh, and because $50,000 or collectively all this money put together doesn't really go that far. So I'm trying to understand where in the training aspect of the linkages this is going to be the most beneficial, and if it's ongoing, where's the money come from an ongoing standpoint, if it is ongoing?
Who's that question for, Bridget?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Commissioner Savas. I think Bridget and Brian could best answer that. I do know that the projects that we described in the presentation to you for workforce investment, that would be an initial funding startup, I guess, our initial year doing this, for lack of a better word, but it would fund a certain number of participants. And then we'd probably have to maybe look at an annual allocation after that. And Bridget and Brian, if you wanted to say more.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Savas, for the question, and Tracy for the presentation. You nailed it. The idea of an annual investment so that we can get to a place where the industry can confidently say that it has that it's inclusive and it hit all of those benchmarks would require more ongoing investment. We will, of course, will be leveraging our existing Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds, as well as our state funds and any additional resources that we're able to attract to our organization or the region in partnership with our Columbia Willamette Workforce Collaborative partners. I would say that as far as what the impact could be, I really think the sky's the limit. If we start this year and start to encourage and engage new individuals locally in a conversation around pre-apprenticeship, that could really spark a lot of new ideas and innovations. As for, is it training or creating or preparing people, pre-apprenticeships are really both. It gives individuals an opportunity for exposure of what the trades are, what they could touch. Women in trades, for example, as one of the local pre-apprenticeship programs, they will really touch on all of the trades from carpentry to electrician to laborer and across the board, so that within that pre-apprenticeship program, someone has enough exposure that by the end they're like, this is not a fit for me, or this is a fit for me. I'm going to apply for the apprenticeship for this part, for the area that makes the most sense for them. And Brian, would you fill in any of the gaps from that response?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, everyone. I would say that the question around funding and ongoing funding, the other piece of this, and Tracy did speak to this around the regional collaborative committee and that work regionally. That group is working together to identify additional funds as well, and so there is a large effort kind of going into that kind of additional funding. Like you said, there is a big need for funds to do all the work that we need to do. And then, yeah, the training versus pre-apprenticeships are, in order to be registered as a pre-apprenticeship, they have to have strong connections to their industry partners and the JATCs. And so in a lot of cases, there's a very quick connection straight to an apprenticeship program out of the pre-apprenticeship. There's no guarantees, but that's a really quick way to get into those apprenticeship programs is through the pre-apprenticeships and the partnerships that they've established.
Okay, so and I'll just end with this question, I guess. So it's basically the role that you would be playing is more of a role of trying to recruit and direct and counsel people into the trades.
We would be, because as a local workforce board, we're not a direct service provider. So what we would be doing is helping to fill that need in our community by contracting with a pre-apprenticeship program to be located here, providing the supports and the technical assistance with partnerships. For example, in the conversations that we've had with Clackamas Community College, they're open to using their facilities to bring a pre-apprenticeship program here instead of beginning one on their own. That sort of leverage is something that we can help coordinate that I think would really serve the industry.
Thank you.
All right, Sonia.
Thank you, Chair Bernard. Bridget or Brian, were you able to participate in the home builders forecast this week at all? No? So there was an interesting discussion. I don't know if my colleagues were, but I was really intrigued by it and I just wanted to learn more about it. But it was the need to look at this issue from a national perspective, and because it's serious need as far as workforce, as we are wanting to sustain our economy and make sure that there are workers to do the work that's going to be necessary. And my gosh, we just look at our little microcosm of Clackamas County and Oregon with the wildfires and needing to have a skilled workforce to do that building. So I was just curious, just because I have you here, wanting to know what you know and how we as commissioners can be helpful. I know Commissioner Schrader may have thoughts on this because she's on like the urban caucus at NACO, and she's on the board of NACO, and she's does all that work. But from your perspective, how can we, yes, we can do what we can at the local level, but this looks like this is a need to happen beyond our small world here.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. And you're absolutely right. This is a national issue. And I would say that across many of our industries, we're in crisis when we think about having a solid stream of talent that's ready and able to move into those occupations. What's interesting about pre-apprenticeship is how it's different than an apprenticeship program is it's not paid. So somebody is in a training program full-time for no less than 8 weeks. And for women and people of color to be able to sustain their lives and take care of their families on that, it can't happen. I mean, it's just too expensive to live and thrive in the community without some sort of stream of income. And so to be able to help support people with support services is just going to be, it's an absolute necessity when we think about skilling up our workforce for both the construction and trades, as well as other industries. And so I think a way to be of assistance is by adopting models like this, keeping our fingers on the pulse of what's going on both regionally and across the state. Several other local workforce boards also have identified construction and infrastructure as a targeted sector. So learning from them and partnering with them so that we're not recreating the wheel. And I'd say last is telling the story, making sure that as many of our community members and our other decision makers, leaders across the state and at the federal level know what's happening and how Clackamas is investing in its future workforce and diversifying. So I think those are some ways that would be of help.
Hey, Martha. Then Ken.
Yeah, for those questions, Commissioner Fisher. As you folks know, one of the things that we do at the national level is with our Community Economic and Workforce Development Board is we always lobby Congress to make sure WIOA, or the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, gets its fair funding, and that that is something I know that Bridget and I think Brian and you folks, when travel opens again, you consistently go to, I know that they have workshops and a workforce symposium in Washington, DC. Let me know, because I'd love to go to one of those with you. And yes, I really see this, I hope, as an ongoing relationship, similar to the relationships we have with the Children's Center, Clackamas Women's Services, Northwest Family Services, all of those nonprofits, because workforce is significant. And it really, when you combine workforce training and some of the early learning hubs with parents who are needing a little extra oomph, Healthy Start, Head Start, so on and so forth, it really makes a huge difference for folks to really get into a trade, to get that training, to not only get the help they need with their families, but also the opportunity to build their skill set so they can be gainfully employed. So it's a great way out of poverty. And we are the only county that doesn't really, this is the first time in a very long time we've given any direct dollars to our workforce partnership. I will tell you that Washington and Multnomah County, I think, give significant dollars to the Portland Workforce Group. What's it called again, Rich? I don't know. I just know. What is it called again, Bridget? The Greater
Work Systems.
Work Systems Inc. And they do great work. But I'm really hopeful, and I know we have a constrained budget, so I'm not talking about, you know, anything big or large at this point, but we are actually doing more. And I hope in the future we continue to support this effort, because it should be one of our primary goals, and it should be one of our really go-to nonprofits in the county as we build capacity with our nonprofits. And thank you, Tracy, you did a great job, and you've spent a lot of time on this. And I'm just so pleased that we work together. And Paul, you can't have her back, so too bad.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, some thank yous. I want to thank our staff, and particularly Tracy, for the work that she has done on this project. I'd like to thank Paul Philpott of Northwest Carpenters, who helped push this from outside our organization. And I want to thank Martha for reminding us that we do need to support our workforce partners here in Clackamas County, and that this is an opportunity to finally do so. In the Equity and Diversity and Inclusion Conference today, a comment was made we've all heard before, but I'll reiterate it, and that is, show me where you put your money and I'll show you what your values are. We talk a lot about equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we have passed resolutions. It is important to also actually do something concrete. And this is one of the concrete things that we can do. There are 47 million people in America living in poverty. Some of them live in Clackamas County. Getting people into jobs that are family wage jobs should be one of our #1 objectives. It allows people to support themselves, support their families, and not have to live in dire poverty. It raises up groups that in the past have traditionally been in the low wage jobs in our economy, both women and minorities, and gives them an opportunity to participate in the middle class jobs, the trades that definitely pay a living wage. I'd remind people that a fully loaded electrician as a journeyman makes $105,000 a year. That's a good living. That is a living that can buy a home and support a family. And anything we can do to help people get to that point, I think, is beneficial for them and beneficial for our community. So those are my comments, and I would love to make the motion if the chair is ready to accept one.
Do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go. Yeah.
And then I have discussed the options with Mr. Schmidt, so I'm making a motion that I'm reasonably certain that he's on board with. I would like to move to approve option 1.
Martha seconded it. Her mic's off, but I saw her.
Second. Okay.
any further discussion? Well, I'd like to say something, and then Paul does too. I want to say that, you know, one thing, for example, in the auto industry, I was president of the Portland Area Automotive Trade Association back in the 80s. We could not find technicians. The advantage here is that if we require on public projects that they provide work experience for apprentices, those people will come to work and they will learn a trade. And that's great. You couldn't force them to come to my auto repair shop. But you also saw Toyota, Nissan, and all those Chevrolet, Ford, they took all the employees and trained them. So this is a great program that provides excellent opportunity for anyone interested in using their hands and their brains to get a great job and improve their future and their family's future. So Paul and Sonia.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Jim. You know, I had the same struggle in my business, which was a unique one. Most of my folks that I end up training through my programs went off and became machinists and got into industries. A couple of them stayed or moved into the automotive industry, but for the most part, it was trades related. I have two questions or concerns or suggestions, and obviously the motion's there and the second's there, but that is, number one, is that because this is an economic development type of thing, it seems to me that there ought to be some eligibility for economic development funds through the lottery or something like that. So that's something I want to pursue. And secondly, for all the reasons we stated, we need to make sure this program actually works going forward. So I want to make sure that there's some kind of metrics, and as we manage, you know, our program Managing for Results, that we have a results-oriented effort here, and that it's actually fulfilling what we all desire to see happen.
And I think, Bridget, they do keep track of those metrics, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes. We have, we track all of the people, or not track, but keep tabs on all of the people that come through WorkSource Clackamas and that are engaged in education or training opportunities. And we have some very specific metrics that somebody got a job, somebody kept their job for 3 months and then 6 months. And then also they're making more than when they started our programs. So those are, and then, and they started an education or training program and then they completed. So those are all, those 6 metrics are things that we're tracking on a quarterly basis and have pretty regular conversations about what those look like. And if there were additional asks around demographics, we would be able to splice that too.
Great, thank you. Sonia and then Martha.
Thank you, Chair Bernard. So I'm just concerned, of course, because we are in a budget constraining time, and I noticed that in our worksheet, it doesn't say where the funds are going to be found. It says to be determined what the funding source is. And so I guess my question is for Gary, do we have enough savings given our lack of travel and other expenditures that we have done this year, or staff savings, or, I mean, how are we gonna, I know it's not that much money, but I think with every expenditure, we must look through the lens of where's the money going to come from, and how are we making sure that we are being responsible stewards. So go, take it away, Gary.
Yes, there are multiple options, and my intent is to come back to you, commissioners, and tell you exactly where it would come from. One is, yes, your own travel budget in your own department line item has not been spent, and that is $40,000 right there. Second, I've shared with you and the public, there is budgeted money in what we call a non-departmental account for days just like this, when the commissioners have a new request that has not previously been budgeted. There are funds in that account that this could be used from. And also I'm open to, of course, Commissioner Savis's idea to investigate if our economic development lottery dollars perhaps could be used for this. So plan to, there is the funds. The question is what pot to take it from, which I will research and come back to you. But today, once you give me the direction, I will make sure to find those funds. But yes, we have the capacity to fund this.
Thank you for that.
All right, Martha.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gary. I really appreciate it because this has been a long time coming, you know, years actually. And Bridget and her team has brought our workforce board to a high new level of capacity and team building. It's been really kind of a phenomenal thing to watch. And Paul, to your question, I just wanted to mention workforce always has to adhere to very strict metrics, because in order to gain the federal dollars that they get, they have to justify everything. And it's an organization that I can honestly attest has no, there's no gap in the numbers and the metrics and the tracking that happens. I wish all of our organizations actually track the metrics the way our workforce board does, as well as the other workforce boards across the state. It's pretty stringent and they meet every requirement consistently. And I've been on the board for a while, but this has been good governance for many years. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Martha. I just want to say that, you know, for our, whether it's general fund or it's lottery dollars, I think we should in kind do what the federal government does, and that is require that same level of audit, or, you know, making sure that things are, you know, we're achieving the results embedded. So I don't necessarily say that we need to do it ourselves so much as we need to have the oversight to make sure that we're actually accomplishing the mission at hand.
And I think I think that you'll be very pleased. I have to be honest, as a numbers person, you will be astounded at how well this will be managed. So.
All right, we're behind. So Christina, would you please poll us?
I sure will. Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertston?
That was an aye.
Yeah.
Mike's off.
Sorry, aye.
Perfect, thank you. Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Chair Bernard?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much, Bridget, Brian, and Tracy. Excellent job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Gary, what's up next?
Yes, next is Water Environment Services Facilities Master Plan. This was a carryover from last week where you ran out of time. So we have Greg Geist, the Director of Water Environment Services, and Lynn Chacon, who will present. So whoever's going first, please go ahead as soon as you're ready. And they're here. I'm stretching for time. I don't see their cameras on, but their names are showing up.
Well, I'll just do it because I just saw this.
Well, the staff did a lot of work to prepare, so we'll give them.
All right, we'll let them do it.
Go ahead, Greg.
All right, good afternoon, Chair Bernard and Commissioners. My name is Greg Geist. I'm the Director of Clackamas Water Environment Services, and today Lynn is going to do all the talking, but we're going to be talking about our boring wastewater treatment facility. It was built in 1986, served about 50 or 60 households out there, and we're proposing or moving forward with a very different way of servicing that area. And so we've talked to you about this before. It's in our approved 5-year capital improvement plan, but we wanted to bring it back to you one more time and run you through the project. So with that, I will hand it off to Lynn.
Thanks, Greg, and hello, everybody. As you know, or may know and have forgotten, West has 5 treatment facilities, and most of the time you hear about Tri-City, and there is a slideshow to go with this.
Yes, if you want
to make it much more interesting.
You can either share your screen or I can do it for you.
Please, would you please go ahead? I wasn't prepared to do that. I was told that's going to be done.
You can just do it with puppets.
Sorry, 1 second. I'm just pulling it up right now.
You got it?
400 pages.
No.
Just kidding. There's the slides.
There we go.
Yeah. No.
I can pull it up here in a minute. There we go. That looks right. Okay. You can back up to the introduction slide. We've had 5 facilities, and most of the time you hear about Tri-City or Kellogg. Those are our 2 biggest facilities and where we spend most of our money. That's why you hear about those most of the time, but we have to meet our discharge permits at all 5 of our facilities. And operationally, our 3 facilities up on the mountain demand a disproportionate amount of our staff's time. And today, I'm going to talk about our treatment facility up at Boring. And after over the last several years, we've had pretty continuous issues up there meeting permit. We have condition issues that are worsening. And it became clear to us a couple of years ago that we're going to have to spend significant dollars up there at Boring. And so our engineering and operational staff worked with a consultant and developed a facilities plan. That's a wastewater planning approach, a methodical approach to decide what to do next. We evaluated alternatives and developed a recommended plan for the future. So I'll take a couple minutes and acquaint you or reacquaint you with our Boring facility and describe our challenges, walk you through our evaluation, and then ask for your approval of our recommended plan. We presented this to our Citizens Advisory Committee in September and got their endorsement. And as Greg mentioned, this is included in our 5-year capital plan. With your approval of our recommendation, we'll move forward with bringing a consultant on board to move forward with design. Next slide. The facility was constructed in 1986. This is an aerial view up in Boring. It's located just south of the intersection of Highway 212 and Ritchie Road. It consists of an influent pumping station, 2 lagoons, which you see there on the right, 2 sand filters, and ultraviolet disinfection. It discharges to a pretty tiny body of water. It's the North Fork of Deep Creek. It was designed back in '86 for conventional secondary treatment, which is pretty basic treatment, removal of BOD and TSS. And since then, more stringent limits have been put on the discharge, including a year-round ammonia limit that's harder to meet and a temperature limit on the effluent. And in recent years, it's these 2 criteria that have been problematic. Specifically hard to remove ammonia in the winter and hard to heat below a certain effluent temperature in the summer. Next slide. In addition, wet weather to the facility has increased. The facility was designed for about 18,000 gallons per day, or the heavy red line there across the bottom. Rain is shown on the top of the graph and influent flow on the bottom, the blue dots. You can see that almost every year we exceed the capacity of the plant. Flows just decreased a bit in 2018. We had done some work to rehabilitate the collection system. It's also a drier year. Either way, we still exceeded the capacity, and the loadings, BOD loadings to the plant are almost double the design loadings as well. It's over capacity. Next slide, please. So the result is we can meet our discharge permit up at Boring about 3 months of the year, 2 months in the fall and 1 month in the spring. And as I said, ammonia is the issue during the winter, and the problem is both high flow and low temperature. We're okay in November and December when the groundwater is still low and not seeping into our pipes. But it starts coming up, and in January and until April, there's just too much flow, and it's too cold to give the microorganisms who remove ammonia time to do their job. The last several years and this year, we will be sending trucks up there to haul flow from boring down to a west manhole to the tune of about $130,000 a year. The upside of that is that it also eliminates the need for our guys to spend about a day a week scraping sand off the top layer of sand off the sand filters, because they become plugged because the flow is so high. We get so many particulates there on the top of the filters. In the summer, the temperature of our effluent's just too high to discharge, can't meet permit. We don't treat for temperature. So we irrigate it on our property. We grow grass, which in turn needs to be mowed. I mentioned we have some condition issues. So in addition to the permit, we need to replace the influent pumps, the lagoons on the mixers, and the liners, or the mixers on the lagoons, and the liners on the ponds. Those lagoons are in need of repair also, need to be replaced. Next slide. So we developed alternatives. We have 4 here. Alternative A is just abandon that treatment plant and pump it down to another facility for treatment. Alternatives B and D are both convert the existing treatment plant into a better treatment plant. Alternative B is more extensive, be a bigger investment, nicer plant. Alternative D is pretty much a Band-Aid approach to doing the minimal to fix up the facility that's there. And alternative C is to pump the flow to a on-site sanitary system like a septic system, treat it minimally and put it out on a field. Next slide. So small print, but I assume you have these in your package. We do there's about 60 connections, Chairman Bernard.
Thank you.
So we evaluate the alternatives from a non-monetary approach. Can we build it? Is it constructible while we treat flow? What's the regulatory flexibility if regulations change or get tighter in the future? Can we accommodate that? Can we accommodate growth? How hard is it to operate and maintain? And will the public accept the alternative? The highest ranking alternative here was to build a pump station and pump it elsewhere. I can go into detail, but we looked at Sandy, which is of course out of district, but closer, and then to a west manhole, which is where we haul it today. That is by far the highest ranking alternative from a non-monetary valuation. Then we looked at cost. Next slide. Alternatives A1 and A2 are the pumping alternatives. They have towards the lower end of the life cycle cost. A1 is pumping to Sandy, includes no charges by the city of Sandy, and there's other reasons why that may not be feasible. We recommend A2, which is pumping to another west manhole. Alternative A, whether it be A1 or A2, it's the only alternative that mitigates risk of future growth or regulations with a low total cost. Next slide. Graphical representation of life cycle costs. I want to say it's green line at about $5 million is our recommendation. It is about a $5 million capital investment, and then next to no or very small O&M costs going forward to be one of the lowest life cycle costs of the alternatives that we looked at. So higher capital costs, flat O&M, and it mitigates future risk. Next slide. This is overview of what we plan for the pipeline route goes from boring down 212 to a west manhole in the right-of-way, relatively small diameter force main. And that's it. Next slide. Any questions?
I have kind of a Captain Obvious question, and that is obviously you can't charge the 60 people the $5.2 million. So it is part of the district. I know you're talking about it at the district level funding this project, and obviously A2 is the best. Does that mean you eliminate the treatment plant? Oh, okay. All right, thanks, Paul.
So what's the long range? I mean, is we do this in perpetuity? The staff recommendation is to basically truck it, I'm hearing. Is that correct?
No, A2.
No, so I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss to what the solution, the recommendation is, because I'm puzzled by the recommendation that says we're not going to meet standards.
No. The recommendation is that we will convert that treatment plant to a pump station. The flow will come into a pump station and we'll pump it to a west manhole that's sent. It'll drop by gravity then down to Kellogg or Tri-City.
Oh, okay. Well, when I read the packet last week,
that's not what this is.
Again here. Minimally upgrade existing facility, comparable life cycle costs still will not meet NIPID's permit. That's the recommendation that's in the packet.
Yeah.
That's what it says. Well, it will not meet NIPID's permit. Why?
We will no longer have an NPDES permit there. The plant as it is today does not meet the permit 9 months a year. And it meets permit because we don't discharge, but we are not able to discharge and meet the permit 9 months of the year.
Okay. So, and help me out. I mean, it was a big packet. So the recommendation is D.
No.
And
yeah.
Oh, A2.
That appears.
I am as confused as Commissioner Savas on this. I'm looking at the words recommendation.
Yeah, why don't you look at your own work packet? The packet, I mean, the first 2 pages of the packet, read what it says and tell me why I'm confused.
Like Greg.
Commissioner Savas, that's a typo. It should say the recommendation is E, not D.
Oh.
It's
that,
not
well,
D.
that explains it.
Yeah.
So how about the language in there?
The recommendation is A2.
That's not what's in the packet, Lynn.
Okay.
The packet, the pump option in the packet is D.
Okay.
Okay. So
E,
you have,
sorry.
you have A, B, C, D, and E. So you're saying E. Is that what I'm hearing, Greg?
Yes. Apologize for the confusion.
Okay. So the language under the word recommendation where it says does not meet NIPID's permit, that's actually all that language is incorrect. Is that what you're saying?
There was one option, option D, was the minimal upgrade, and that we still long-term didn't believe would meet the NPDES permit. We're not recommending that option. We're recommending option E in the packet.
Okay. All right. Now that we cleared that up, my other question is, what do we anticipate for growth out in that area? And how does this project tie into that? Are we going to be able to have a lateral that we can actually, or a conveyance line that we can tap into, or is the pump station so far on the other side that that's not really viable?
Go ahead, Lynn.
When we get into the design of the project, the head, the power that we need to give the water to lift it over the hill, we either have to double pump it at boring, or we will pump it once at boring and pump it again halfway down. and we'll do an evaluation. But if we build 2 pump stations to pump it over the first hill and pump it over the second hill, the second pump station will be located at a place where we could tie in the future for future growth. That is a consideration.
Okay, so on that one last slide you had displayed there, Lynn, with the red line, it looks like it's going along Highway 212. Where's that manhole at? About what street is that approximately where the manhole or the tie-in is? I
knew somebody's gonna ask that and I didn't look again. Maybe around 172nd.
Okay, that's what it looks like because it's near the Rock Creek Junction by just the lay of the mapping there. So therefore, it's really, you're actually going right through, really taking in all of Damascus. You're actually going right through the heart of Damascus, really.
Pretty much.
So I'm hoping that whatever we do there factors in the needs out there, both environmentally and both from a capacity and growth standpoint.
And Commissioner Savas, that was definitely a consideration. I mean, the main focus is to get boring in compliance and have a long-term solution for that. But as they are going through the engineering and design, we've already taken that into account, and we will continue to do that to see if we can get, double duty, so to speak, for this moving forward.
So the cost of that and really that planning and factoring is yet to come?
We estimate a planning level cost for pumping the sizing and pumping a facility for the boring flow at about $5 million. If pump stations are expandable, we'll have a site. We could talk about whether we want to lay a second pipe. We wouldn't size a pipe for some flow that we don't have, but we can also put a double barrel in while we have the trench.
Well, yeah, I know how expensive, well, not as well as you all do, but I know how expensive it is to lay a conveyance line at that kind of distance. So it would seem that if we could only just, I don't know, logic, I mean, it's you're the engineer. You guys are the experts, but it is hard for me to fathom that we would want to build or potentially build a second line, knowing how expensive it is. And if there was a way, again, to capitalize as much as possible. That area is going to grow. It's in the urban growth boundary. I'm not boring, but Damascus, right? Wherever that line is. And I think we need to be cognizant that we maximize every expenditure possible to take in that into the future growth out there. And also environmentally. And so how's that basin rule apply? I know years ago there was a talk of a what was that kind of plant? There was this plant that basically dewatered the stuff, and then Greg,
probably a scalping plant.
Scalping plant, thank you. So that's really not what we're talking about here, obviously. So.
I guess you could say the boring facility is a scalping plant. I mean, it's a tiny little plant up in the system, right?
Okay, so does that mean that we do this, we'll be trucking solids?
No.
Okay, so it's really not separating then.
Right.
No, it's just catching the flow and putting it in a pipe.
All right, that's all I have.
All right, Ken.
Actually, I think Commissioner Savas and I both had the same question, particularly on what the actual recommendation was. Now that I know that it's E, I would move to approve option E.
Second.
Yeah, the chart showed 2E, I mean 2A2, so that's where the confusion was. Okay, any further discussion? Christina, please poll us.
Absolutely. Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertston?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Chair Bernard?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. You have more to present? Or is that it? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. And Gary, what's up next?
Next, we'll begin the issues list for today, which is quite lengthy. We'll go as efficiently as we can. First is wildfire update. Nancy Bush, Director of Disaster Management and Incident Commander of the Emergency Operations Center, to provide this. We'll wait a moment for her to come into the room. She is. Hi, Nancy. Go ahead for wildfire update.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to give the big picture, as I usually do, for the whole state and what is going on there. We're talking about individual assistance here, and that's where we're getting a lot now as we're moving into recovery more and more. So registrations here for individual assistance in the state is 24,638. Valid registrations, 23,867. The breakdown is 6,766 of those are owners, 17,068 are renters, and 23 are unspecified at this time. Excuse me. There are 434 maximum grants, which again means they get $35,500. And again, that is statewide. Here in Clackamas County, we have 2,338 total registrations. 2,309 of those are valid. The breakdown there is there's 955 owners, 1,352 renters, and 2 that have not been specified. And we have 2 here still in Clackamas County that have gotten the maximum grants. In Clackamas County, the amount that we see going out for replacement, repair, and rental, and these are averages. Replacement is 91,312. Repair is 13,820. Rental is $225,070 here in Clackamas County. So just to let everyone know too, they are collecting identified vulnerabilities. And in Clackamas County, and all of these are self-identified except for age. Age 65 and older is 393. Low income is 446, and access and functional needs is 229. So that in general is what's going on in Clackamas County for numbers. A couple of other things. The registration for individual assistance has now been extended to November 30th, and this is also true for the SBA loans, which is the Small Business Association loans. So people can still go to our website at clackamas.us/wildfires and click on the FEMA link, and you can still go in and register for individual assistance until November 30th. So we encourage everyone to do that, please. We've also received a note, and there was a press release that went out from the governor's office stating that the state is going to cover personal property cleanup 100%. Regardless of what FEMA decides to do. So we're working on that right now, making sure that we're getting all that information out to our residents. We're talking to the state as well as our own county council to see what kind of agreements we might need to have in place to have all of that happen. Our understanding is that they're not only doing personal property, but also doing the trees and the right-of-ways that we've identified as well. So we're trying to get into that and figuring out, excuse me, what those agreements will look like. The household hazardous waste teams are now 95% complete with the ROEs, which is the right-of-way of entry that they have received. And so they should be done probably this week with those. And we did get 68 right of entry forms. We're still trying to get more as we move forward, and we will try to get more now that we know for sure that the state is picking up the personal property removal as well. So that is what I have for the wildland fire update.
That's big.
It's huge.
I heard that on the news this morning. I was going to ask you if I had mistakenly heard that, but that is huge.
It's huge.
Wow. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, State of Oregon. I'm just shocked. That's great. Thank you for the good news.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to COVID-19 update. Nancy, please go ahead.
All right. So our numbers for COVID-19 here in Oregon are 57,647 positives, 765 deaths. 905,336 negatives. Clackamas County has 4,659 positives, 74 deaths, 86,529 negatives. Multnomah County has 12,930 positives, 196 deaths, 201,157 negatives. Washington County has 7,937 positives, 91 deaths, 128,223 negatives. There are now 347 hospitalized statewide for COVID, and last week that number is 269. There are 83 of those are in ICU beds, which was 55 last week. 40 are in vents, and last week that number was 26 at this time. There's 163 beds available statewide. Last week there was 191, 752 beds. A little bit too about the hospital beds. Here in our region, which our region is Clackamas County, Washington County, Multnomah County, Columbia County, and Clatsop and Tillamook. There are 280 beds occupied, 56 available. That's ICU beds. Non-ICU beds is 1,764 that are occupied, and there's only 168 available. Yesterday too, I had a meeting with the region, and we talked a little bit about hospital beds there. And looking here in the region, and this number of course changes pretty frequently, but yesterday about this time when we had the meeting, there were only 13 ICU beds here in the metro area. And we're now starting to see some of the hospitals that are electing to cancel some surgeries and other procedures that might be able to be put off. There is now a website on the, I think it's on OHA's website where they're doing some updates with what's going on with the hospitals daily. And I'm happy to send that out to you. They just started doing that. Some of the numbers seem to be a little bit behind from what I might be hearing otherwise, but it is a pretty good site. So I'm happy to send that out, but it is on the OHA website. So our weekly case count for the week of November 9th through the 15th was 676, another high. And that's 159.6 per 100,000. We had 60 outbreaks as of 11/16. 18 of those were workplace, 10 were food and farm, 24 were long-term care facilities. There were none in daycares, 3 in schools, 2 at the healthcare setting, 2 social, and 1 other, again, for a total number of 60. And that's my update for COVID.
So go ahead, Paul.
Christina, I was wondering if you could give me ability to share a screen. I want to just show something that Nancy sent to I believe all of us, but it was about hospital capacity. It's a graph, I think. Sometimes pictures tell 1,000 words. So if you give me, thank you.
Yes, you should be able to.
All right. You can all see that graph?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So this green line represents the, as I understand it, the COVID beds, and you can see the spike. Here is November 1st, where my cursor is. Here is November 8th. So you can see where we were about on the 10th. So this is updated as of the 10th. That's all I have. So we can see where we were back in here. This is a weekly chart, basically. So October, you can see where we were. So we have seen this spike, and that is COVID patients. And the other colors kind of display what are the ICU beds and everything that Nancy kind of talked about, and basically gave us a numeric thing. And now I just want to just say that while I had some issues or concerns about the metrics that we've been using for the regional thing and the state, I've been spoke to that. I think that what I adhere to is the hospital capacity matter. And I'm going to take that one because I have family in the industry. My daughter's a nurse, my niece is a nurse, good friends of mine are in the medical profession. You know, they're living this on a daily basis. So I'm puzzled sometimes, and I'm not understanding why there is such a, perhaps maybe a disbelief. And I think that disbelief might be different for different people, obviously. Some people think that, you know, masks aren't necessary. Some believe in them, but they don't think that somehow it can be shared or spread. And why, maybe why we are concerned, or why the OHA is concerned, or the governor's concerned. And it's about running out of hospital beds, frankly. I think that one is one that seen this spike, not knowing that what is happening today, or the people that are perhaps are potentially being infected today, we may not see them actually make it to the hospital in a week or two. So we have this lag period, and we've known this for a while. So we have this lag period. So what we do today, we may not see the result of 2 weeks from today. So we have to prepare and say, okay, we have this much bed capacity, and we have to adjust to that. And so I think that sometimes seeing is believing, and maybe we need to do, and this was in my communication to the governor earlier this year. Part of my communication was we need to do a better job of messaging. And I'm kind of wondering if we're not really educating our constituents out there as thoroughly as we could, because again, if people are misunderstanding what this all is about, then I can see why we have confusion and differing opinions. But the metrics aren't, there's so many metrics out there, it can be so confusing. And when you hear the numbers, Nancy, you're doing all you can do, but maybe we can show a graph like this every week, and at least that, and pictures speak 1,000 words. But I just want to just say that I'm going to give folks out there that may not understand this the benefit of the doubt that maybe we could do a better job messaging, frankly. Thank you.
So, Gary, you know, I know there's been some email, Facebook messaging about the chair-elect's comments about Thanksgiving. And I just want to say that that is a personal decision at some point. But when the possibility of infection spreads beyond those going to dinner to family and friends, or grocery store clerks, or doctor's offices, it's no longer a personal thing. We had 13 deaths, which is the highest death since we started this. And somebody commented that after Thanksgiving, people should plan for a funeral. And I hope that's not true. But I just want to say that Clackamas County has done a really great job saving lives during this unprecedented COVID pandemic. In partnership with Governor Brown, our regional partners and staff, our efforts continue. We're communicating how you can protect yourself and those you may come into contact with. This is a crisis that continues to grow, as you can see in the chart Paul showed. Our hospital capacity is limited, and so we need to be careful. It continues to grow and take the lives of those we love. While following the governor's guideline is difficult, only you can prevent the spread of the virus. So you're welcome to have your own opinions, but the facts are the facts. Wearing a mask, washing your hands, and social distancing does work. And a lot of the cases that we're getting, there was a Halloween party of about 100 people, I believe 15 left with the virus. There was a smaller one where I don't remember the size, but 6 or 7 left with the virus. And who knows who they infected. So please make the right decision and protect the ones you love. And, you know, as an elected official, it is our job to be the model. And the model for us is to show others that we care enough to wear a mask. So I ask you, citizens of Clackamas County, the 57 people who are participating today, to please spread the word. Wear a mask and save lives. Anybody else? Ken.
I'd just like to say that as an elected official, we have a responsibility to follow the law. There are those who think that the governor doesn't have the authority to make the decisions that she's made. Well, they're incorrect. The law is quite clear that she does in fact have that authority. There's also case law to that effect and federal law to that effect once an emergency is declared for a pandemic. So for an elected official to blatantly and deliberately ignore it and take defiant action as the chair-elect is doing is patently irresponsible, let alone utterly inconsiderate of the health and welfare of the citizens of this county. I am appalled that somebody would behave that way. This is not about political positioning or anything else. It's about the health of the citizens of our county, pure and simple, and it is utterly irresponsible. That's about all I have to say on it. I'm just disgusted.
Thank you, Ken. Martha, your mic.
So I would tell our citizens in this county to listen to our medical experts. That would be Dr. Present, that would be the Oregon Health Authority, that would be the people who understand the science of this virus and the history of pandemics in our country, in our nation, and in our state. And we must, to be good leaders and sound leaders, be very clear that the information and the science points to the fact that isolating, wearing masks, washing your hands does prevent actually the spread of this disease. This disease is serious, it's deadly. The science suggests it has long-term effects, even after one gets the virus, potentially with some people. It is still an unknown, although I have hope that eventually we will have, I hope sooner than later, a vaccine, an effective vaccine. Right now that isn't available. So as much as you miss your family and as much as you want to congregate, I understand that because I miss my grandchildren. I haven't seen them in over a year. It breaks my heart.
Yep.
But we have to put safety first. And that's the message I, as an elected official, want to make sure that our citizens out there are aware of this. And also, as someone whose parents were nurses, whose sister was a nurse, who saw my parents on a daily basis go out to hospital systems and do their job and sometimes expose themselves to things, I want to thank our medical professionals for all that they do. And it's also our job to really caution people as well. If we overload the medical system, we're all going to be in trouble. And that will be extremely dangerous. So take care, be safe out there. Zoom Thanksgiving, thank goodness we have technologies where we're not isolated and we can still connect to people in ways that are productive and safe. So that's my message to folks. And wear your mask. It makes a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Sonia?
Thank you, Chair Bernard. Nancy, I really appreciate the numbers around capacity, hospital capacity, especially because it's shocking and scary, quite frankly, to see the numbers rise to this level to where we have so few beds available. So what I want people to think about as we enter into this holiday season is that the holidays are time about caring about people that we love, and all of us, each and every one of us, is at risk if our health system becomes overwhelmed. And it doesn't have to be about COVID. It could be a car accident. It could be a slip on the stairs. It could be bonking your head or having a concussion or any type of medical issue. Everyone is at risk. So the important urgency to follow our doctor's advice, especially when it comes to informal social gatherings indoors, those are dangerous without precautions. And that is why the recommendations from public health are no more than 6 people at a gathering from no more than 2 households. And with that, to socially distance and wear masks as much as possible. So I would say that I appreciate my colleagues in promoting public health and standing behind Dr. Present and the good science that she brings to us. But let's move into this season caring about each other and making sure that we protect each other, because it's all about the families that we love. And being alive is something to be really thankful for, and being healthy is something to be really thankful for. So as best as we can, let's do that for each and every one of us.
Thank you. It's better than the alternative. Can Nancy go now, Gary?
No, she's on several more items to come. So we'll move on then to CARES Act funding update. We could also bring in Elizabeth and Rich, please. This is something the board you asked for, to have a high-level overview of the money that we are receiving for reimbursement from the state, from the Federal CARES Act, how much we've spent to date, how much is left for us to be reimbursed, how those funding decisions are made, kind of just a real high-level overview for you. So I'm not sure who will start, but we have Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director, Richard Swift, Health, Housing, and Human Services Director, and Nancy Bush, of course, Disaster Management Director. So who will start?
Yeah, so we're going to have Elizabeth start with a larger overview, and then I think we'll move into maybe some questions in a little bit more detail. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Gary. Good afternoon, commissioners. Just to share, our state CARES award funding is at $17,710,167. That's what we are awarded. And we currently have received about $8 million. Our expenditures are at 7.6 million. So the difference of that is 1.6, and that's out for reimbursement currently. We have about 8.1 million that we are anticipating to spend over the next couple of months that Nancy can share about some of those efforts. But that's the big overall picture with the dollars, where we're at, how much we've spent, and where we're anticipating using the entire $17 million.
Thank you. So just as a few things that I know you have special interest in, which is about business recovery. So we do have part of that 8 million that we have out is 1.5 million for business recovery. And I just want to remind everyone early on, just to get a little bit of history, early on in this process, the first, like through April or May, if I recall, it was May, everything we did, of course, was on reimbursement and still is. But we were prohibited from using dollars or getting reimbursement for certain things. One of those was economic recovery. So early on in this process, we weren't even allowed to do that. As we moved into around June and July, we found out we had a total of $17.7 million that we had for our entire effort here in Clackamas County, which had already included what we had spent. And again, as we moved forward, we had to spend the money and then get reimbursed. So that I want to remind everyone of that process, because it became challenging at times, as I'm sure you know. So again, back to business recovery, we have $1.5 million that we have out for business recovery. 500,000 of that goes to businesses, 500,000 to childcare, and 500,000 for a recovery center that we're working on. BCS is working on that, and they have brought that to you as a commission, I think on 2 occasions, if I recall. I think looks like the 29th of September and the 27th of December. So those are some things that you have probably heard quite a bit about. Our EOC operations all along since March have been charged to these dollars, and we are spending about $255,000 per pay period for EOC reimbursement. We also had COVID-19 leave estimates, which we still need to pull in, which is around $224,000. We have a public health recoup, which is $1.3 million, excuse me. And we have other open encumbrances of various things of almost $850,000. Because of COVID too, we've had some changes here in the county that we've had to do some reconstruction, which includes my office, disaster management. Some of that also with CCOM and also with A&T, which is assessment taxation, and that's around $260,000. Our contact tracers, we have been using CARES dollars for that, partially so we can use the dollars that we're getting in from Oregon to stretch that out into 2021 so we can have some contact tracers as we go into next year, which is $1.4 million. Our respite rooms, we have the respite rooms that we've discussed here with the commissioners as well. That is in Washington County, and we just got that invoice in, and that is for $300,000. And then, which means we have about $1.269899 million left. And we can roll that into CCSO labor, which is allowable. So that is how we're going to make sure that we are spending all of our dollars for the CARES dollars. So that is kind of the broad overview. And as far as how the decisions are being made, a lot of these decisions were brought to the county commissioners. Another thing that isn't on here, but we do have the forgiveness that we're doing for our businesses for licensing fees. So we have brought those, especially those very large items, we have brought to the county commissioners for review and approval before we move forward on those. And that is what I have just as that broad overview.
You're on mute, Jim.
That's a first. All right, so Paul has a question, Martha.
So Nancy, thank you. My recollection was, and maybe I'm wrong, but if you could just clarify, that's where I'm going with this, and that is that when the CARES Act money was first released and Multnomah County got their direct payment, if you will, as Washington County and Portland and so on, and then the state got the balance and was basically, there was basically a proposal or some language in the federal legislation that said divvy that out to the jurisdictions accordingly on a proportional basis. Wasn't our cut roughly estimated at 75 million at that time?
So there was the balance of it was given to the state, you know, because, and you're right. So Multnomah County, Portland, and Washington County, which I think between them got around almost, I think 350 million, like together. So the rest of the money was given to the state to do what the state needed to. I don't think there was any language in there that said they had to divvy it up. I don't think. I would have to take a look at that for sure. And then and yes, early on, so we didn't know for sure if we were getting anything when we started this process and responding to COVID.
Yeah, so, you know, in essence, you know, the Multnomah people who live in Portland obviously live for the most part in Multnomah County. So they really got almost double the amount of really per citizen, per capita than probably those in Washington County. And we got obviously considerably less. But my recollection was from our legislative staff that the language would have given us basically in the federal legislation about $75 million versus 17. So what they have done, when I say those other jurisdictions have done for businesses in their county or their city was substantially more than we were able and still are able to do. And that was, again, another part of my communication to the governor. I'm, you know, still to this day distraught about that. And here we are, you know, talking about the remainder of what's been deemed. Where it all went, I don't know. But at some point, you know, in the future, in the near future, hopefully, when this is behind us, I think there needs to be some reconciliation or some analysis as to where the money went and why did it happen this way. What the CARES Act funding expires at the end of the year, and we're still going to have COVID in the beginning of 2021. Don't know if there's any more money coming, but I'm frankly, still upset about the fact that we did not get our proportional share of those dollars, and our businesses, the employees of those businesses, the communities, the members, my heart goes out to them. After the governor's announcement on Friday, all I did was get phone calls and communications, and I can understand their pain. And it is extremely disappointing. And I know, there's other counties and other county commissioners that are expressing very similar thoughts and concerns, but this is the part where I'm sorry, but I don't think that I would have, if I was governor, I would have done something different. I don't want to be the governor. But in this case, this is about people's lives and their businesses or their jobs. And when just the inconsistency of this is just terrible. And I just want to just kind of express my frustration about this. So it doesn't sound like we have very much money remaining to do much of anything substantive for those businesses out there. They're now getting a second hit, hard hit, that'll probably put some folks under, and people will permanently lose their jobs, unfortunately. And that is sad.
All right, Martha and then Ken.
Yeah, Nancy, I had a question about the child care. Where is that money? Who are we contracting with, or how's that being distributed? And
yeah, so BCS is distributing that for us, and I believe they're doing that through MISO. And
okay,
it has not went out yet. They're actually getting ready to do that application and get that out.
Okay.
So, and I talked to Sarah Ekman about that, and I think she's available if we need her to come in, but they definitely are working on getting that out.
So are they really giving it directly to families to find providers, or are they giving it to providers who will then,
I believe they are giving it to providers.
Okay.
And again, they also got the licensing fee forgiveness as well.
Okay.
Facilities did.
Okay.
And Sarah just said providers.
Okay.
Gary, what? Oh,
I was going to say, bring in Sarah now to answer it, but it sounds like she just did. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We need to finish up pretty quick here, move on, but Ken?
Yeah, I echo Commissioner Savis's frustration and irritation with the state government on the distribution of funds. I think we were all pretty well incensed about that and the way Clackamas County was treated. The $75 million, if I remember correctly, came about as a result of a back of the envelope calculation based on per capita distribution in the other two counties. And had we received the same level of per capita distribution, it would have been around $75 million. And it was grossly unfair the way it was handled as far as Clackamas County was concerned. Thank you.
All right, and I think we all agree.
Yeah.
Quickly, I'd like Rich and Brenda Durbin to quickly share. So the other component board you had asked about, Health, Housing, and Human Services is receiving a lot of COVID-related funding that's on your consent agenda, and why. So quickly, and there was a memo that was in your packet. Thank you, Rich and Brenda. That's a lot of pass-through dollars, really, but I guess if Rich and Brenda, can you expand just a little bit on the type of funding you're getting that's CARES related?
Sure, and what I'll do is I'll let Brenda jump into this and move through this, and because we actually have a little bit of a time crunch just because we're also meeting with the Legislative Caucus at 3:30 today, so she can jump in and give a high-level summary since you guys already have that packet. Go ahead, Brenda.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. For social services, we have received about $3.2 million. These are CARES Act dollars that were distributed to the state of Oregon and then distributed out through the Community Action Network throughout the state to provide rent assistance. We're about 88% spent. That money has to be spent by the end of December. And we are doing a good job getting those dollars out to households who need them. I just do need to note that we estimate that's about 10% of the need for rent assistance. So there are going to be many households in Clackamas County who are left without rent assistance. And we have the eviction moratorium scheduled to end at the end of December. We also have received some funds via our friends at Community Development, $1.3 million. These are community development block grant dollars associated with the CARES Act. Those dollars will be used to provide case management and support services to households who have been impacted by COVID, particularly those who are in quarantine and are or self-isolating. And then we have a number of dollars associated with winter shelters. Some of those are COVID related, emergency services grant, special allocations from the state. Some of those dollars are our regular state and county allocations for emergency shelters. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about emergency shelters a little later in the agenda. And then your memo also includes funding that comes through community development, the ESG Emergency Solutions Grant Fund, CV2, $2.5 million, CDBG CV3, 1.8, and your memo there includes information on how those funds will be used.
So thanks, Brenda. Any questions on those?
I don't see any hands up. It would be great to have at some point a total of all the CARES dollars we're getting, because the 17 million is just part of it. The rest of it is coming from the state through various departments. What's that noise?
It's an odd noise.
Yes, I think we already do that, but perhaps Elizabeth or Nancy, a running total of the total amount of money we're getting related to COVID at Clackamas County.
I think we may, Elizabeth, did we have got that note from Michael? And some of it comes to us directly too from the feds, the feds, which is block grant dollars.
Well, those wouldn't count in that total.
Well, they're CARES dollars though.
Oh, okay, okay.
Even though they came from the feds, they're still CARES dollars. We can only spend it for COVID.
Okay.
We'll get you that number. It exists.
Yeah, we will.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
Hi, it looks like we have, oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, let me get that for you. I thought I was able to pull it up, but I wasn't.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. So we'll transition to the next topic, project turnkey funding. So this is funding from the state legislature for those who have lost their homes due to wildfires. There's a deadline of next week. So a very quick turnaround. Brenda will share this update as well. And anyone else, Brenda, you want to bring in for this?
No, I think it's just me and Rich. So yeah, project turnkey, 2 allocations. The first allocation of $30 million is for counties impacted by the wildfires. So Clackamas County will be competing with, I believe, 7 other counties for the $30 million, $5 million of which can be used for operating expenses. So there's a 3-phased application process. The first phase is due next Wednesday. So I'm actually missing a meeting right now where staff from the Housing Authority and Social Services are working together to complete that application. The first phase is sort of determining your eligibility. They're going to be looking at things like, do you have experience managing properties? Do you have partnerships with culturally specific organizations? So after we meet the first phase criteria, the second phase is all about identifying properties, doing the due diligence, and then the third phase is just completing the purchase. So I feel like we're in a good place to be successful with all the good work that the Housing Authority, Community Development, and Social Services does historically around sheltering. Yeah, so we're definitely on target to meet the deadline of next week. And I'm very confident that we will pass the first phase of the application process.
And this is buying hotels, right?
Buying hotels, yep, to be initially used as emergency shelters.
Yes, okay. Martha?
So please jump in real quick. We have not at this point identified actual motel hotel sites for purchase. Just be clear on that.
That was essentially my question, you have not identified anything yet?
No.
Or so when's that going to happen? What's the timeline for that? I mean,
phase 3.
Yeah.
I'm unsure of that at this point. I mean, part of it too is there actually have to be motel hotels that are actually willing to sell. So that'll be a piece, that'll be the next step in the process after we make this application.
So you aren't aware of any right now then? Okay, I just was wondering about that, what the inventory was and what was available out there. So, okay, thank you.
Sonia, Paul, and then Ken.
Thanks. So I'm concerned about when the rent moratorium ends, or the eviction moratorium, and I'm just curious, Rich and Brenda, if you can give us a just quick, what the current time frame is, and what, because having all that rent come due is going to be really, really tough. And I'm seeing that as a huge issue, and I'm just wanting to know what we're doing to plan for it.
Well, I can certainly say we're extraordinarily concerned about this, and I'll let Brenda jump in, but we are at this point unsure of how we're going to handle this, because at this time we do not have funding identified to be able to deal with something that is, if I'm correct on estimates, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 or at least $33 million, wasn't it, Brenda? What was our estimate from the state? About $33 million in back rents owed in just this county alone. So I'm not sure what to do about this. And also the reality here is, it's not clear to us that with those types of evictions occurring, who would be coming in to fill those units where an eviction occurred. And so we're unsure what our next steps are. I think we're kind of waiting on the state at this point, because at some point the moratorium will have to be lifted, and then because landlords do need to be receiving money to pay their their mortgages, et cetera, in terms of debt. And so because those banks aren't going to hold off on this for much longer. So this is a big question for the state. Actually, it's a big question for the country.
Just to follow up, two comments. I think.
Go ahead, Brenda.
So in my opinion, this is a federal government scope issue. I've heard that this is, $100 billion issue nationwide. So if you're looking at a Clackamas County need of $33 million, those are just dollar figures that the state are never going to be able to come up with. So we really need federal action with the scope to really resolve this. And I do understand that there are discussions around another moratorium could happen in a special session, and discussions around that next phase of the moratorium, looking at support specifically for landlords. So at this point, we've really been focused on paying individual rents. There's interest in among some legislatures to really focus on shoring up the finances of the landlords.
And when does the current moratorium expire?
The end of December.
Okay, so that's coming up really quick. Please let us know if there are things that we need to be doing with our federal delegation specifically. I mean, the number of 33 million in Clackamas alone is really useful, but we might need to really do a concerted effort to get the message out as to how critical this is.
Yeah, we'll be certainly updating when we meet with the Legislative Caucus this afternoon, or just in a moment. We'll be also updating them regarding this reality.
Also, you will all be invited to be on the phone call with the governor on Thursday. She is meeting with the chairs and the commissioners from Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah County, and you're all invited. So this is a good issue to bring up. So Paul, and then Ken.
Yeah, I guess mine's more commentary. I think I don't think I have a question in this, but a few things. So I'm hopeful that as staff has stated, that this is a nationwide problem with people, you know, having this upcoming date where rents or rent assistance will be needed or they'll be out. They'd be the moratorium, this whole thing, and there needs to be some bridge funding between now and when we get back to normal. And hopefully there's seems to be some good talk about the vaccine, and that's wonderful, early next year. So with the aspect of this purchasing of motels, and if there aren't any, and I'm really scratching my head on this one, trying to understand, because they're not typically suited for long-term housing by the way they're structured and the lack of, you know, kitchens, sizable kitchens or laundry or things like that. They're not built for permanent type housing. So it seems to be it would be a wiser use of the dollars for, you know, frankly, buying the rooms or renting the rooms, you know, on a temporary basis, and let the proprietors stay in place, and you know, provide those rooms and the housing, temporary housing they need, and we're not stuck with a facility or the downtime of trying to acquire the facility, and we can actually provide the assistance right away. I mean, I still don't understand the logic of that. And if there is difficulty and there's nothing in the wings for availability in Clackamas County, that would certainly be, if there was flexibility. It doesn't sound like there is any, so, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there is flexibility, those dollars could be spent to just rent the rooms. Clackamas County would see a benefit right away, or Clackamas County residents who are in need of housing would see a benefit right away. So that seems to be the low-hanging fruit. I don't know why the legislation is not flexible in that matter. And if anyone wants to add anything or I misunderstand it, please chime in. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Humberson?
I was waiting.
I'm trying to see what's causing that noise, if it was my mic or not. So.
Oh, okay. Hey, Rich, to Commissioner Savas's question, is there any flexibility as to renting rather than purchasing? That's my first question.
No.
Thank you.
No, there's not, Commissioner.
Okay, that answers the question. So it's basically buy it or nothing. So then I would suggest that you contact Mayor Drinkwine in Estacada. In a casual conversation I had with him a couple of months ago, he indicated that there was a motel there that has some possibilities of being sold. I don't know any details or even how totally valid that is or isn't, but it's a lead that you might want to follow up on.
Oh, certainly will do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Martha. Mike.
Additional information. This was based on a program that was implemented in California that evidently has been successful. Also, I would direct my colleagues to go to the National Association of Counties website, because other states are actually doing this. And essentially, they're looking at the rooms, but in terms of, you know, bathrooms and places to eat, I mean, oftentimes there are restaurants. But if you want to look up some of those models, they are available. So I would check with NACO. And I'm not sure I remember what the name of the California program was. I think it was Home Key or something of that sort. Is that correct, Brenda? Yeah. So just, I know that people feel it's a little bit risky, but evidently it has worked. And the whole point is to make sure that we have the capacity for permanent sheltering, or just, you know, some permanent, so we can get people in and then out to, you know, hopefully full-blown housing. So, but go ahead and look at those models, and it might make you feel a little better about it.
Yeah, I've been on the phone calls about Project Turnkey. It's obviously we have homeless people who need a place to stay, and we're not accommodating those needs. So it is something worth looking at, and a model that has been successful across the country. So any other questions? Gary? What's up next?
All right, next we'll keep Brenda. We'll have warming shelter update that you had requested, commissioners. Brenda, anyone else you want to bring in for this?
Nope.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay. So warming centers. So we have a traditional model and a new model coming on board this year. So our traditional model are warming centers that open up when the temperature reaches a certain degree. And these are congregate shelters, so everyone being in basically one room. We were not sure if we were going to even fund that model this year because of COVID. We do have a current 2-year contract with 2 providers, Malala Hope and the Father's Heart. The Malala operation was able to secure a larger facility, and the Father's Heart is able to operate with less capacity. So we will be moving forward. We're working with public health to provide guidance to the operators, and we were putting in processes in place. So if a guest arrives at a congregate shelter and is exhibiting symptoms, we will be able to transport them to our new model, which is the non-congregate. So non-congregate shelter means motel rooms. So we actually have a fairly robust budget this year. We have some new funding from the state. We are also able to tap into some FEMA match dollars. So we have a little less than $5 million overall for our winter shelter budget. The nice thing about the motel program is it's winter long. It's not going to be opening and closing based on the temperature. We're going to be able to provide winter long shelter to individuals experiencing houselessness. And our service providers will work really closely with our guests to help them move into longer term, more stable housing. Procurement, we're working with procurement to secure motel rooms. We're hoping to secure as many as 300 motel rooms. These would be block leased December through April. We also are looking at finalizing contracts with 3 providers, and the providers will provide that staffing assistance interfacing between the guest and the motel operator to make sure that their basic needs are met, and to also start making those connections with longer term housing resources.
Hey, any questions?
Good planning ahead.
Yeah, I don't see any. So thank you, Gary.
All right.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda, very much. We'll flip the order here, Rich, so you can get to your next meeting. We're going to talk next about potential issuance of tax-exempt bonds for Caritas Acquisitions Organization for a housing project. So Rich will stay in the room. I'd like Elizabeth Comfort in, Stephen Madcore, Andrew Naylor, and Golgan, who is the county's bond counsel. We'll start with that group. Commissioners, today you are not deciding whether to say yes or no. You are deciding, do you want to have a public hearing to go forward? So again, you're not making the decision on the request. You're simply deciding, are you going to move forward with this process or not? So I'm hoping this can be a fairly quick discussion. But Rich, do you want to kick it off, please?
Sure. So good afternoon. So in early October, Golgan reached out to us to have a conversation about a TEFRA hearing. Golgan works with Hawkins, Delafield, and Woods, a Portland firm. She's bond counsel. And so this is about essentially Caritas. And so I decided went ahead and took that on. It was myself actually doing the work because I didn't have any staff to assign this to. So the first piece was to orient ourselves to Caritas. Their mission is Caritas as a nonprofit unites people with a purpose to preserve affordable communities that uplift and empower our residents. So they are based in California. They actually own 21 sites in California, offering anywhere, their smallest is 17 sites to 465 sites. These are mobile home parks. And what they do is they buy these mobile home parks. They were incorporated as a nonprofit in 1996. And then what they do is they preserve the rents and they spend money on upgrading those parks. They're a pretty impressive organization. They are looking at we don't have anything like this in Oregon. They're looking at purchasing 2 sites here in Oregon. The first is Holly Tree at 57 spaces. Current rents are $622. The second is Lone Acre, 11 spaces at $665. you know, in talking with them, the assurances, I've been in conversation with Randy Redwoods, who is their CEO. And what they have confirmed to us is they have not sold a single site in the entirety of their existence since 1996. They've committed to paying property tax on these 2 sites. And also, you know, at my insistence, they will agree to work with us in terms of right of first refusal if they come to a point where they feel they have to sell either Holly Tree, Lone Acre, or both. And that would give us the opportunity to work with an organization like CASA of Oregon related to helping these move towards co-op, so cooperative ownership by the lessees on those sites. And this has happened before in Clackamas County with CASA. So the next thing was actually bringing in county council to have a conversation about what does holding a TEFRA hearing mean for the county. And what the TEFRA does, and it's the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982, it gives Caritas access to lower cost financing and interest in terms of their bond issuance, which is a total of $32 million as I understand it. They're actually buying 7 sites in Oregon, 5 in Marion County, and 2 in Clackamas. So I've been pretty impressed with Caritas in terms of their commitment to what they're doing. They actually are doing something for us that has been a struggle, which is they could be potentially a partner in the acquisition of further mobile home sites here in Clackamas. That's been an area that we've identified as being a particularly high risk for purchase and redevelopment and moving into more high cost housing, because really mobile home sites are one of the last vestiges of truly affordable housing in this county. So at this point, what I'll do is I'll stop there, maybe turn it over to Stephen and to Elizabeth to provide their sense of this. The one thing would be their bond sale is December 3rd. I did talk with Mr. Redwoods, and he assured me that we could do the TEFRA hearing on the 3rd if we chose to do a TEFRA hearing, and that would not interfere with their bond sale.
Thank you, Rich. The only thing I would add to that, commissioners, is that they did agree to continue paying the property tax as though they are a 501c3. So that is a loss we would not take with the purchase of these 2 properties.
Andrew, go ahead.
I think it'd be helpful to have Golgan kind of explain why Caritas is coming to us, because this isn't a county issued bond. The county is experiencing no liability as a result of this transaction. And just to be clear, and Golgan, please correct me if I'm wrong, but Hawkins represents Caritas. So Golgan's firm represents the entity requesting this. Golgan still represents the county in this matter. So she is still our bond counsel, even though her firm is representing the company. So just wanted to clarify those roles. And Golgan, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So first of all, good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Golgan. My last name actually recently just changed, but I'm sure you don't know any other Golgan. So I have worked with many of you over the years. As Andrew mentioned, I'm bond counsel to the county, the Housing Authority West. I actually am wearing 2 hats today. So in addition to being bond counsel to the county, I represent an issuer out of New Hampshire that is doing a project in Oregon. I don't technically represent Caritas, but I represent the bond issuer for this program. And so in a nutshell, what's going on is that under the IRS code, private entities can't borrow on a tax-exempt basis unless they go through this hearing process and give the citizens in the location where the project will be a chance to be heard. And that's what this TEFRA requirement is. So even though the county wouldn't be the bond issuer, in this case, this entity in New Hampshire would be, still the county, because the projects are located here, would hold a hearing, allow the citizens in the county a chance to be heard, and then approve the bonds just for purposes of meeting this IRS requirement. All liability for the bonds, the repayment, et cetera, would be from the Caritas Corporation.
So Elizabeth,
I'm sorry, are we required by law to do this, Golgan? Could commissioners say no to a hearing?
No, you're not required by law to do this. This is a requirement of the IRS code that would allow nonprofits to borrow on a tax-exempt basis. Nonprofits can borrow on a taxable basis. That means that it would be more expensive for them. And presumably when they have to borrow on a taxable basis, then that gets translated to higher rents for the residents. But in order to get this lower interest rate, there's this administrative requirement in the Internal Revenue Code.
This is not dissimilar to the hospital authority, correct, Elizabeth? Yes. Your mic. Elizabeth, your mic's not on.
Apologize. Correct, Commissioner. They would be using the county as a vessel for the tax reduced or tax-free bonds.
All right. Which has brought in Clackamas County hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment in Rosevilla, Willamette View, and the one in Old Lake or Westland, which I can never remember.
Oh, Merrillhurst.
Yeah, whatever that's called at Merrillhurst.
Right, yeah. Mary's Woods.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, so just so I'm clear, I mean, they would freeze the rents at where they are today, or they would freeze the rents at a higher rate or a future rate?
So Paul, first of all, the Caritas team is on this call. They are just listening in, so they're available to ask questions if you have more detailed questions. But they would be required as a nonprofit that's doing low-income housing to reserve a certain amount of the spots for low-income individuals. I believe that the rents, they have rent information. Rich, do you remember what the details are of how much?
Sure. At Holly Tree, the current rent is $622 a month. At Lone Acre, it is $665 a month.
Did you
say the difference being that you've got 57 sites, as I said, at Holly Tree, and 11 sites at Lone Acre.
Okay, so Gulgan, you mentioned that they would reserve some of the units. What does that mean for the others? I want to get a clear picture of what's actually taking place here.
Yeah, of course. So Paul, I think it would be best if Randy's actually on the line. Randy, do you mind talking specifically about?
Well, we can bring him in. Gary, how far behind are we?
We're way behind, but as long as you're here, as long as you can stay the rest of the afternoon, commissioners.
Okay. So yes, go ahead and bring him in.
Christina will do that.
Great. And there's also Peter is with him as well. I think they might be both really useful.
Remember, commissioners, your only decision is, are you going to have a hearing or not?
Right.
I see you're both here, but your mics are on mute.
Yeah.
Okay, Randy, you're on.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone, commissioners. I was listening to the discussion, and to address Mr. Savas's question specifically, what we do historically is we enter into a regulatory agreement with the county or local facility, and that regulatory agreement covers all the sites of the particular community, and it imposes on us a rent control formula that very typically says that we cannot raise the rents more than the cost of living index that is publicly posted and advertised. So we stay within that boundary. That rate of rent increase would be across the entire community. It wouldn't be sectioned out for any one particular block of homes. It would be for the entire community. So in other words, if the cost of living went up 0.5% or 1% or 1%, or then that would dictate the rent increase for the period.
Okay, so all the units, let's just say it's 125 units, all units remain, and the rents are whatever they are plus the cost of living or the inflation aspect.
That's correct.
And are those properties or facilities, is that protected in perpetuity?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So it's
that is the mission of your organization.
It's entirely our mission. That is what our 501c3 IRS nonprofit designation is dictated to, and that is maintaining affordable housing.
Okay, so if you don't mind me asking, I'm fascinated by this. It sounds wonderful. I mean, it really does. So I just commend you all for being here today. So thank you. So by what means what funds sustain your operation? I mean, what do you rely on for funding?
We're all self-funded. We don't depend upon public funding. We don't depend upon federal or state funding. We've managed to own our 23 communities by bond financing, which is what we're going through here, and being able to periodically, given the strength of the cash flow of those communities, be able to refinance the bonds, and that has perpetuated our capital and our sustainability.
Okay, great. Well, I'll definitely research your organization and learn more. So thank you.
Please do. We're very proud of what we've done.
So are we good to have a hearing? Thumbs up? All right, I see thumbs up. So let's set a hearing date.
Okay. And I'm
Thank
always...
you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your work. We'll move on then. Next,
okay.
Short-term rental update, and to see some clarity. So please, Elizabeth can stay. Bring in Dan Johnson and Samara
Thank
Phelps.
You.
Thank you, Richard.
So again, this is not to have an hour discussion on short-term rentals, but rather to clarify the full cost recovery discussion, the cost involved, to help guide you on what your next step will be. The public hearings have already been scheduled. There's some questions and clarity about your next steps. So again, Dan Johnson, Samara Phelps, and Elizabeth Comfort. So Elizabeth is Finance Director, Dan is Director of Transportation and Development, Samara is the Tourism Executive Director. So who would like to kick off, Dan, I'll call on you to kick off the staff conversation where we left it off and guidance for the board today.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon, Board of County Commissioners and Chair. So just briefly, we're going to get to that topic of discussion on the fees, but I guess I really wanted to make sure we're all on the same page about the steps that we're taking and moving forward. There seemed to be some confusion at the last policy session. So after extensive public involvement, 9 policy sessions, maybe 10 policy sessions, we came up with 2 actions that had to take place. The first action was a county code to develop a program. This is around the livability concerns the board had. That would be implemented and adopted in county code. You've had that first reading. That was November 5th. The second reading is scheduled for November 25th. That's basically the registration program, basically some fire life safety regulations, those livability aspects that folks had concerns about. The second action that has to take place is a ZDO amendment, which is a zoning and development ordinance amendment. That is essentially a very simple act. It's with our planning commission now. It won't be in front of the board until the first or second week of December. And it's simply saying, yes, short-term rentals are allowed within Clackamas County in certain zones. These support one another, but they deal with 2 separate issues. And I think it's important to be clear about that. You have the operational STR program, which is the code. You have allowing the use, which is the ZDO. They can go together or they can be split, to be frank. What we have to date is direction from you. That direction from you was to take both forward with approval by the end of the year, with a discussion on the fee to follow during our standardized budget process. That usually occurs, fees and fines dialogue would probably occur sometime in March, okay? We have given you a good faith estimate about what we think that cost will be. I'll speak briefly on my side of the ledger, then I'll hand it over to Elizabeth and she can speak briefly on her side. Essentially, it is 2 FTE, 1 within code enforcement and then 1 within finance. Obviously, the code enforcement work would be specific towards short-term rentals. To be frank with all of you, can I affirm to you today that that person will occupy all their time with short-term rental work off the get-go? I can't. I'm assuming there will be an uptick in code violations, but these are the costs if you want somebody to go out there and facilitate a program and actually follow up from concerns that we have from our community. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth to speak briefly about finance.
All right, thank you, Dan. Again, good afternoon, commissioners and Gary. So I've been doing some research, getting caught up, because I've come into this discussion several months into what you have been working on since last spring. And we currently have an FTE that is doing accounts receivable as well as the collection for the tax, the lodging tax that we have currently in play. And it's about half time that she is giving to this support, Catherine, in our finance department. But however, she is not able to spend a lot of time on going after those entities that are not paying and following up on certificates. And so we do need currently additional FTE. Now, if we were to make the program, actually the short-term rental, legitimate in the county that we gave authorization and allowed for it with the zone changing, our 263 registrations that we currently have, you know, at minimum, I would imagine they would double. So that would add the need for the follow-up of the registrations and the collections. And then we would also have some teeth in that they would be allowable, that we could enforce the registrations. We do not currently have a fee for the registration. So it's on an honor system that they're voluntarily submitting their registrations and their 6% tax fee. So I would definitely support the minimum, another half FTE, but probably if the program was fully functional, another 1 FTE we would need in finance.
So, thank you, Elizabeth. I want to speak briefly to the scheduling, why these schedules we thought were important. I mean, one, if you recall, right now, the current proposal is that the ZDO amendment would go in effect 30 days after it's approved. The program, which you're adopting through the code, would not go into effect until July, I believe it's July 1st of 2021. There's some benefit in there because theoretically those uses would become allowed initially, which would then allow folks to actually register for the TLT and may give us a better handle on the total number that are out there. And then we have a better idea of possibly about what this costing might look like and what that fee might look like. We did talk a little bit with Samara today, and there is some talk about maybe some outreach that could be done, kind of a communication plan. I'm not sure, Samara, if you want to talk about that just for 1 second.
Yeah, we were speaking about the gap between the code enforcement portion and the allowed use. And we really don't have a way to know who isn't registered. We don't know how many additional registrations will come for short-term rentals. So this space that we have in between when we agreed to implement the code portion and the fee portion, we have an opportunity to do some outreach and see if we can unearth some of those short-term rentals who are not currently registered, which is an undeveloped communication strategy, but it is an opportunity for us to get some data, essentially some data, proactively go out there and try to get people registered who are not, with the empowering news that this short-term rental is an allowed use officially in the county. And then we'll have a better idea how many registrations we're really talking about, which then informs what the cost of running this program will be.
So thank you very much, Samara. We actually had a discussion around when we were asked to develop what a cost estimate might look for this particular fee. We did that. I mean, because there's going to be a code enforcement end to it, and there's going to be an implementation end to it on finance. It was our best guess. But what I can tell you is that we haven't been involved in some of the discussions the board has had where we have topics around a $25 fee or a $10 fee or a $15 fee. That is a challenge unless we get some general fund support, which I'm guessing is, I'm looking at Gary right now, you're kind of down here to the left. I'm guessing that's not going to happen. So we're happy to answer any questions. We know it came up as a discussion at the policy session last week. I believe Commissioner Savas brought it up and are here at your disposal.
So I got my hand up first, so I'm going to start. I want the ZDO done before the end of the year. So I want it I wanted an allowed use. As far as the fee, I'm just going to say this. If somebody, it's a land use decision, right? So, I mean, people are going to register that, well, this is my idea. People are going to register that they're going to do short-term rental, right? Let's say it's $25 or $50. That's just registering. That means they're going to send in a thing that's certified they have the safety issues and that they've had, you know, and that allows us to put it on a spreadsheet or put it in a program. And that's all that is. The next phase is where we've promised enforcement. And that can't be done without a big cost. Am I correct in what I've said so far?
Treading lightly, somewhat. It's okay. It's not
tread on me, baby.
It's not a land use decision. Once the ZDO amendment is approved, it essentially will allow those as a primary use within the zone. They would coordinate through finance to register for the program.
Okay. But that has nothing to do with the next part, which is enforcement.
Correct. And as we discussed before, there are different elements of enforcement that fall into this dialogue and discussion around STRs. There is the kind of livability issues, like my parking space, or they're not collecting garbage, or things like that, which would fall into, and health, life, and safety issues, which would fall into code enforcement in my group. Then there's the noise, which was still with the sheriff, like parking illegally in the road, which is still with the sheriff. But yes, that's where the work would come in. I also want to clarify, even the registration up front is going to require somebody to coordinate that. Yeah. We say that without really knowing. I'm looking at Elizabeth too. We talked very openly and honestly about this today. We're doing estimates on how many of these are out there. We're doing estimates on how many are going to register. So I can affirm to you, Chair, we are on a path right now to get the ZDO approved by the end of the year to make them an allowed use. That is no problem.
Okay.
We can either go forward and on the same trajectory with this ordinance adoption and get it done by the end of the year. We can delay it when we have a better handle on what those costs might look like to do the implementation until next year. The world is your oyster. Whatever you guys want to do, we're just following your lead.
Okay, Paul.
So Dan and I were having a transportation conversation, and we went off on this topic a little bit. And so when I speak, I want to just speak with, so you all know that it was a conversation, and the ideas that I shared and he shared. And Dan, I'm not going to put you on the spot per se, but you know, this is right on topic here. So I might ask for your clarification if I misspeak here. So as Jim, I totally get it. You want to get this done, you know, while you're here, and you had a list of things, and this is one of them. I have always been, and I've said this over, and I'll repeat myself just to make it perfectly clear. I am in support of legalizing and I've said this every step of the way, I'm in support of legalizing this short-term rentals. The work session we had in October, it was my understanding that they were going to be separated, and Dan helped me clarify that the separation that I was thinking of, and which was out there, was the code amendment piece that apparently is happening not at the hearing level, not at our level, but through the Planning Commission, which comes back to us before the end of the year, right, Dan? So perfect, okay. So that I'm on board with, okay? That's a separate, and Dan stated that earlier, that's separate from the ZDO process that no, you're well, right. It's part of, it's intertwined, but there's two separate processes, right? So I think that, my opinion is that if we just legalized it, we somewhat use the honor system to see what takes place. We had a simple registration process. It could even be done in the recording office, where we don't need to have additional staff. They could just simply have a fee that is, there's cost recovery for the filing, and they file the form. And if anyone wants to go to see who they are, where they are, it's on file. Okay. Now, as I understand it, in the previous work sessions we had, I asked staff a question a long time ago, and the question was, how many short-term rental related code enforcement issues is code enforcement dealing with today? And the answer then was, well, they don't even know of any. And the answer I got from Dan was probably next to zero. Now, taking into account all the public processes we had and a majority of the concerns we heard from the community, whether it's on the mountain or it's nearby where we all live, have been around the neighborhood impacts, all of which, and Dan and I spoke about this, are something that code enforcement can't really do. It's law enforcement, in this case, the sheriff's office, that is the one that is going to have to respond. So we're not conveying or hiring any or those dollars towards the sheriff's department. So if we implement this entire program as is designed prior to this conversation, as we kind of seem to be on this path, the issues out there that are bothering the neighbors are going to go unaddressed. And that is problematic to me. We are actually adding to the problem in a sense by the fact that we're legalizing it. Now, I'm all for that. I'm not changing my mind. You know, I'm good with the code amendment part to make it legal. What we haven't done, and I don't want to have to spend all of this staff time, monies, we may or may not get the cost recovery we have, and have the public have the impression that we're going to be able to enforce all of the things and life will be good, because we don't know if the sheriff's going to be able to, at Friday night at 10 o'clock or 11:30, drive the mountain and basically deal with a parking issue or a snowplow issue or a noise issue, whatever it may be. That's the uncertainty that I think that I'm not comfortable with implementing all these dollars and all this programming, if you will, for something that's not going to deliver what we're somewhat conveying to our citizens we are. So I'll stop there.
So Paul, I'm totally confused on what you just said. We could continue with the hearing and vote yes, or we could separate the ZDO and do the other part in July.
No, Dan, could you explain the code amendment process? Because Jim's confused.
So right now you have the second scheduled reading for the adoption of a county ordinance, county code to implement the program scheduled for December 25th. Okay. That is not the ZDO amendment, which would allow it as a primary use. So the options that you have are to continue to go forward, adopt the ZDO amendment when it comes forward, and adopt the county code amendment when it comes forward to the second reading. You could pause until you get November 25th. Thank you, Christina. You could pause that reading of the ordinance until a future date, possibly out till next year. Or you could pull the whole thing back and pause the whole process at this point in time. I want to be clear though, because we did put some thought to that question that you had, Paul, about a registration system light and what that would look like. In our minds, the best way to track that would, in all honesty, probably be registrations in the transient lodging tax, because they're already collecting that data. They already have staff assigned to do that. And in all honesty, I think it's a challenge to have folks sign up for that tax when we are telling them they aren't allowed within the county. And I think that will change. And I think that when they are allowed use, you will see some increase in the transient lodging tax registrations. And I think that increase will be able to, and it's in the current confines of our current program. And I think that data will then educate the discussion around this program through separate ordinance and what that fee should be.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, Dan. So I guess what I'm proposing is passing the ZDO amendment when it comes to us which is not the ordinance, but the amendment, and implementing a collection or a registration process, okay? And that's why when you mentioned we could put a pause on the ordinance hearing process and that could come later, that's what I'm suggesting. So it legalizes it, it puts in a registration at a nominal cost, and I don't care where it's at. If it's in tourism to do that, fine. Whatever that registration is, I'm okay with that. But that's a path forward.
That's actually what I said, almost exactly. The ZDO. So let's get a feel for the other folks. I mean, I'd love to get this whole thing done, but I would like to have Paul on board. Doesn't have to be, but the ZDO is the most important part for me. It is something that everyone's doing and we're not, and we can't collect tourism taxes because of it. That's not the primary reason. My primary reason is if I drive up the road here, I can see, 7, 8 places sitting there empty that could actually house people for short term and a way to make revenue for that farm that is struggling because of COVID and all the other issues. That's my main concern. So, I mean, I'm willing to move it all forward at the next hearing or separate the two and do the ZDO, and you guys in the future can do the next phase. But I think you have to do it. You have to, I mean, I won't be there to force you, but you have to do it because you've told the community that you're going to protect the livability of their community, and you have to move that other portion forward. So what about you, Ken, Sonia, and Martha?
Yeah, let me go first because I have to start listening by phone because I got to be commuting here in a second. But I think we spent a lot of time on this and it's been very thoughtful, very conscientious. Staff has done an excellent job in helping us. I think that, Jim, you're right. And I'm sorry, something's happening with my computer. It keeps like making noise. So I'm sorry about that. Anyway, I don't know why that's happening. I think I'm ready to move forward with the whole scenario as far as the regulations and legalizing it. I'm okay with postponing it for however many months we need to as far as collecting fees and working out the fee structure. But I think we need to move forward. And we have too much collective knowledge as a board from all of the public hearings, the testimony, everything we've read. We need to button this up this year with this board. That's my perspective. And I'll be listening, but I'm going to be commuting. So just so you know, that you won't see me.
Microphone, Jim.
Ken.
I think you should move the whole thing forward, including the fee, quite frankly. I'll reiterate, we have told staff repeatedly to make these things cost recovery, full cost recovery. Staff have given an estimate of what that full cost recovery would be. If it's more than is needed, you will have the opportunity to reduce it if you so choose. But I think you need to get it done. We spent almost 2 years on this. There's the expression I heard back in a number of years ago, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This is better than where we have been for many, many years, and it will provide some funding to help on the enforcement end. And if it's not sufficient for things like the noise ordinance and whatnot like that, then maybe we take a code enforcement person and attach them to the sheriff's department so they can handle it that way. There's a lot of different options to deal with that part of it, but to get this done, for God's sakes.
Okay, so for clarification, complete the second reading and then do the ZDO later in the month. Okay, Martha?
Yeah.
Yes.
And if it were up to me, you would also deal with the financial end also.
Yeah, that's the ZD. That's the one we're the second hearing, correct, Dan?
That is adoption of that ordinance, but we are delaying the discussion on the fee until we do as a part of the fee and fine budgetary discussion.
Yes. Martha. Mike. Your camera's off, Martha, and your mic's off. Did we lose her?
Still
Martha?
there, but we can't see her here.
Martha, mic and camera. There's your mic.
Okay, got the mic. I don't know why the camera's not working. Well, wait a minute. Here it goes. Okay.
There you go.
So sorry about that. And sorry I had to leave. I've had some family issues I've had to deal with. So I have been trying to pay attention to most of what we've talked about. So I feel like if I'm understanding Paul is basically to go ahead with the ZDO, but basically pause, not set up a whole program and pause the ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what Paul's saying.
Well, okay. I actually agree with Paul. I do not think with everything else that's been going on that we should be very thoughtful about instituting any kind of fee of any kind at this point in time. I just don't feel good about that.
You do understand that the fee wouldn't be enacted till July of 2021.
Well, it's still unknown.
It can be delayed after that too.
It could too. I mean, so I'm actually with Paul on this one.
Okay.
And if we want to, okay, but if you have the votes, 3 votes to do, I guess that's the way it goes. But
okay. All right. We good?
I'm not sure I'd say we're good. I guess what I heard from, I think we need some clarification though from Commissioner Fisher.
No, Commissioner Fisher, this is my understanding. She wants to move forward on the second reading and the ZDO, as soon as possible.
So I heard her say she could do both, or she could do ZDO only. So she kind of split it down the middle there.
Okay. Here we are.
So
I love this topic.
I'll say it. You're a lame duck board. You're a board until January 3rd, but you cannot cross the finish line alone. The next board will decide the fees.
Right.
There's an opportunity to unwind this. So the question is, are you willing to do something now that can be undone by the future board? And that's life. You can't guarantee what future boards do or don't do, but you have certainty with the ZDO, because it sounds like all 5 of you agree. Definitely
with the ZDO.
That seems to be the easy decision. No decision is where there's disagreement. Since you can't get it over the finish line, I just advise you to consider, do you want to do what you can certainly accomplish now, or do something that may have a different outcome with the next board? Again, that's the next board's call. You shouldn't be bound by what they may or may not do. But the fee discussion is what you cannot resolve this year. So just be mindful of that. So staff just needs to know what you want to do, because right now we're moving forward with both. We can move forward with both, and you just vote and let your position.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Move forward with both, and we can just vote.
Right.
Okay. It's been fun.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tamara.
Thank you. Okay. Next is statewide transportation improvement program, or STIP. Scenario input. We'll bring in Mike Besner and Jamie Stansney to seek your input. There was a document that was attached with your packet. So as soon as they're in, we'll let them lead this conversation. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's late. I'm just going to turn it over to Jamie.
Hello.
In the jungle, huh?
I am. I'm at Silver Falls, as you can see behind me. Needed something for today.
So good afternoon, Administrator Schmidt and Chair Bernard and Commissioners. Pleased to be here with you today. I'm here to talk to you about the STIP for 24 to 27. That's the State Transportation Improvement Program. Sorry, I always say plan, but it's program. This is ODOT's capital improvement plan. So it's pretty exciting stuff we're talking about here today. It's a lot of money, not enough, but it's a chunk of money and some of the only opportunity for some of our rural communities to get money from ODOT. So excited to talk to you a little bit. I'll be brief because I know we're at issues and it's late, but wanted to use this opportunity to check in with you. We've been talking a lot as staff with your transportation liaison, Commissioner Savas, about this. He has engaged on this topic for a long time already, even though we're just starting the 24 to 27 STEP conversation. And this is being discussed at the R1 Act, at JPACT, and all around the region. But the first decision is going to be made soon, December 1st. And the decision is made by the OTC, the Oregon Transportation Commission. And they're going to be looking at selecting an investment scenario. And there was a page in your packet that showed a bar graph. And Christina, I don't know if it's possible for me to share screen, but it probably would be helpful for me to be able to pull that up.
Yes, you should be able to share the screen.
Wonderful. Let me do that just quickly. Find it here.
So Gary, while she's looking, I have a what time is it? 4:15 or 3:15?
It's 4:10 p.m.
It's 4:07. I have a 4:15 meeting. So let's see what we can do.
Right. Is that the wildfire meeting?
Yes.
Oh, am I supposed to be on that with you? Normally I am.
Yes, probably. But let's go ahead.
Right.
We have to keep a quorum to do at least one more piece of business. So I'm going to ask you to keep your meeting, please. Go ahead.
Yes.
I will be very brief. I just wanted to share with you the first decision's coming up December 1st for the OTC. So this is a first opportunity for us to chime in. There will be many more as they will not be adopting this until the fall of 22. But wanted to check in with you. I also had a draft letter attached in your packet that we put together. There was a robust conversation about this at C4. They ended up endorsing the non-highway safety and enhanced scenarios, as you see in front of you here. And I wanted to explain just quickly, there are 5 scenarios for investment. The adjusted baseline on the left is essentially the same version that they used for the last round of investment. And it's broken down into the programs you see at the bottom, which are essentially all very similar, except the top quarter, as you can see, or a third of the dollars. So it's basically, we're chiming in on how we want them to balance money in the enhanced safety and non-highway programs. So you can see the top, it's not a lot of change in between the scenarios. So as I said, C4 selected the non-highway safety scenario and the enhanced scenario. So that's the second one from the left and the fourth one. You can see those are very similar in how they're splitting up the dollars, especially on top of that dash line. And so we, as staff, working with Commissioner Savas, suggests that you endorse the enhanced scenario. And there are a couple of reasons for that I wanted to put forward. First was the C4 conversation. There's dollars needed for Highway 43 and other orphan highways that were potentially going to be funded in the transportation funding measure that will not, now that it didn't pass. So there's opportunity in the enhanced bucket for those orphan highways to be funded. Also, Performance Clackamas transportation goals include funding for I-205 and Sunrise, and enhance is the bucket where those dollars could come from, or projects like that could be funded. So that is why we're suggesting that you endorse the enhance scenario, and the letter reflects that. So just wanted to put that forward to you all today. As I said, this is the first of many decisions, and I'm happy to answer questions, but I want to cut it off so you have time for your other items.
I'm good with the enhanced. I can't see everybody else, but do we need a vote on this?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to support the enhanced. Any further discussion? Let's poll us.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher? I'm not sure if we'll be.
Aye.
Perfect. Commissioner Humbertston?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Chair Bernard?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Next item.
So you're going to send the letter then expressing that? You're going to send the letter that was in the packet? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you both very much. Next, please bring in Tracy. There's a draft letter, commissioners, to send to the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde in honor of Restoration Day. There's a draft in your packet. See, Tracy, any quick update you'd like to give about the letter?
Unmute. Okay. Yes. And this is going to be 20 seconds maximum. So it was in your packet. There's a letter. I was talking with Martine Koblenz, our Diversity and Inclusion Officer, about Native American Heritage Month and Grand Ronde celebrating its annual Restoration Day on November 22nd. And you know Grand Ronde, you've developed a relationship with the Tribal Council, and you remember from your visit last year to Grand Ronde that Grand Ronde is a terminated tribe, meaning that they were part of the termination assimilation policies in the 1950s and were terminated for several decades before being restored on November 22nd in 1983. And so for the past 37 years, November 22nd's been a holiday for the tribe, and they close their office and have a celebration. Which of course this year, because of COVID, will look very different. But this year, or this letter, proposed letter from you, is simply well wishes to the tribe and Tribal Council on a happy and safe Restoration Day, recognition of the tribe as a sovereign and a county partner. So just simply a letter of friendship and support for them.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Let's do it.
That was fast. That was a fast history lesson.
You don't need a motion to approve the letter as drafted.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations to the tribe for their perseverance on that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job.
There is no business meeting this Thursday, November 19th, because you will be at the Association of Oregon Counties Conference. I have a question for you, commissioners. Would you be willing to hold your last business meeting of the year, Thursday, December 17th, in person? The reason I ask that is this will be the last meeting for Chair Bernard and Commissioner Humberston. We are not going to do a retirement party because of COVID concerns, but this will be a chance for you to all be together, and we could have some key staff and have it in person. So would you consider doing that, your last business meeting in person at the county on Thursday, December 17th? Are you comfortable doing that?
I'd love to.
Great.
Commissioner Fisher?
I don't know if you guys can hear me. We should leave it open because we don't know how things are going to be on that date. We all know that we're all mandated to work remotely as much as possible. I think we need to kind of play our...
Yes, we can't even understand your alien voice, but yes, if it turns out that it's not safe, we will not do. I told Gary that as much as I'd love to have a retirement party, we just can't do that and be safe. So I am going to give away 5 awards that I'm paying for out of my budget to special people at the county, and I want to do that in person. If not, I'll film it and give it to them. But that's the last meeting that Ken and I'll have a chance to do that. So if we can't make it, we won't. But go ahead.
We'll aim to do it in person. It will also be remote. It'll be a hybrid meeting, but for those commissioners that are able and willing to come in person, we'll do it in person. If the COVID-19 regulations if we're still in the freeze, then we'll reconsider, but we'll plan on it for now. Okay, yep. All that's left is commissioner communications, so we can keep going or end the meeting, Chair, up to you.
Anybody?
Nothing from me.
I'm done.
Okay, just want to remind you that you have an invitation for the governor to join us on a phone call at 3:30 on Thursday. I think this is like something she did on her own, was not planned. So the time isn't exactly right, but you hope you can join us. It'll be on your calendars, I'm sure. Thank you. With that, we're adjourned.
Okay.